kids are dealing with this technology every day of their life. They're going to be bored to death in our traditional classrooms, and they already are, but with each generation, more and more so. And so what we got to recognize is that these kids are different. Can I use your iPhone for a minute? How many in the room have a device that looks something like this? Okay, let me ask another question. How many of you in the room have a son or a daughter or a grandchild who is a preteen, a teen, or in their early 20s? Hands way up. Okay, for everybody who's got their hands up, how many of you hope the person you just raised your hands about sometime in the next decade becomes independent? Is there anybody that doesn't want that? Because if you don't, you got a mental health problem already, folks. Whose was this? Oh, okay. Let me ask you another question. Take it again. Do you let the kids use these when you take the state test? And before I go any further, I'm not opposed to state testing. Dan, you remember, we're in the state testing program. Largest one in the country for 7 years. I'm not opposed to testing. But they only can do certain things. We don't let the kids use these when they take the state test. And we're going to see how good you can do as a whole audience together. I'm going to ask you a question, and you got to yell out your answer. But you only can have a one-word answer. Okay? Only one word. And don't yell the answer out until I say the word now. Okay? We don't let kids use these when they take the state test because they might blank. Yell out the word now. Cheat. Wow, we all saw it the same way. How might they cheat? How might they cheat? How might they cheat?
Looking up answers.
Looking up answer, yeah. Anybody got another way they might cheat? What is it?
Ask a friend.
Yeah. These darn kids might either use resources or work with others. What are the two most basic skills you need? I'm going to show you with some hard research in a few minutes. But what are the two most basic skills you need to become independent as an adult in 2022? Use resources, work with others. What do we call it in American education? Cheating. I want to ask you a real tough question. I really want you to be challenged by it. Are we trying to force 21st century technology to conform to our 20th century schools? Are we trying to use 21st century technology to transform our 20th century schools? See, today's kids, they're an extension of this technology. They have never lived without it. But it's done more than simply change how they play with technology. How many in the audience got a driver's license within 6 months of turning legal age to get a driver's license? Hands way up. Okay? Let me show you the first part of this. Some of you have seen in the past. The next slide. But it's updated as of last month now. This is what happened with driver licenses for 12th graders in America up until 2019. Updated as of May of 2022. It's a change in behavior. Now, this next thing I know none of you did, but you may have had friends that did. How many of you had a friend that before they graduated from high school went out and drank adult alcoholic beverages with another friend? Okay? Not you, others. Look at this. That was 2019, updated as of last month. How many of you had at least one part-time job before you graduated from high school? Updated. How many of you had at least one date before you graduated from high school? Now, they have not updated the date data for 2022, although all indications are it has fallen dramatically too. Folks, these are fundamental changes. These are fundamental and irreversible changes in behavior. And when we talk about things like SEL, I want to suggest to you, we learned a lot of our SEL skills by trial and error through these types of experiences. They're simply not getting. Our kids are different. But a bigger issue is the workplace, the home, the society they're about to enter is fundamentally and irreversibly changed too. Even more than the planes you talked about versus the rocket ship. Many of you have heard me speak before. I would love to have 3 hours and go in depth on all kinds of technology. I've picked only one example for today. But I'm going to ask you to really carefully think through this example. And don't think about, wow, what's that going to do to me? Think about its impact on education. And what our kids need to learn and how they're going to learn and live and interact. And it's called GPT. And it's GPT-3. Now, afterwards, I want you to Google it tonight, sometime, not during this session, but sometime I want you to Google it, and you're going to get a lot more examples than I'm going to give you. This thing is taken off like crazy. But it began with something called GPT-1 that we all interacted with and didn't even realize it. If I go to send Mort Sherman an email, and I put MS, which are the first 2 letters of his email, what happens, folks? My contact list pops up. Okay? If Bart over here puts the same 2 letters in, is he going to get the same list? No. How come? It's predictive analytics. It's based upon those people in my contact list. No big deal. Not a big deal. That was GPT-1. It would help you find information. But it wasn't just the contact list. More common example many of you use, Siri. Siri goes finds information for you quickly. Isn't it amazing how quickly it finds information for you? That was GPT-1. Been around for a little while. Then we went from GPT-1 to GPT-2. And GPT-2 was 10 times more powerful than GPT-1. Just keep that ratio in mind. And what would it do? It moved from finding information to more monitoring and keeping you informed and predicting. And remember, the kids are going to use this technology and are using it. Best example, I go send Mort that email. I put in subject, first 2 or 3 words, what happens? Anybody tell me? It predicts the next 2 or 3 words, doesn't it? Do you know that it would not predict the same 2 or 3 words for me as it would for Mary Ellen Elia over here? You know why? It's based upon the words she has used versus the words I have used. Now, Mort and I email each other a lot. Mort's a former English teacher. I have dyslexia. He does not like reading my emails. But the next 2 or 3 words be based upon the words I use, even how I spell them. It's predictive analytics, not a big deal. A deeper one I want to talk about is GPS. How many in the room have ever used GPS, Global Positioning Systems? Okay, you're driving. While you're driving, have you ever had it suggest a reroute? Okay, now how's it do it? It knows where you're going. It monitors the cars in front of you who are on one of those roads, and it suggested changes. I travel a ton. I fly, get a rent-a-car, I drive to one of your districts. I use GPS. What would I have used before GPS to get to your district? A map. Now, I want you to keep something in mind. And I'm using as a frame of reference to where I'm going to take you. What has spell check done to your ability to spell. And today's kids' ability to spell. Am I right? Keep that in mind. It's brain development. Because GPS impacts spatial memory and spatial navigation and mental mapping. 8 years ago, I had the privilege of co-authoring one of my books with Paul Nussbaum. Dr. Nussbaum is one of the nation's leading neural researchers. And we talked a whole lot about, at that point, the impact technology was having on brain development in that book. I went back to Paul over the last couple months to say, Paul, what's the research now showing? And forgive me, we as educators are paying no attention. Because in the middle of your brain, you have something called the hippocampus. The hippocampus deals with spatial memory, spatial navigation, and mental mapping. Anybody want to guess what all the MRIs are showing? A shrinking hippocampus in us. And increasingly a lack of adequate development in the hippocampus of young people. Don't need it. Why is that so important? Because the hippocampus is the foundation of the prefrontal cortex. And the prefrontal cortex is responsible for problem solving, organizational skills, and the ability to focus. How many of you have noticed a decline in our kids' ability to focus and organizational skills? And that was with GPT-2. It scares me to death the more I've studied this over the last 2 months to see what GPT-3 could possibly be doing, and we're paying no attention to it. Because GPT-3 first saw the light of day in December 2022. It's only been around 6 months. 2 industries made a ton of money during the pandemic: pharmaceuticals and tech companies. And ladies and gentlemen, those tech companies have made a decision that there's an untapped market for them. And you know what it is? Education. And the deeper discussions we're having more and more, Stuart Udell, who many of you know, and others kind of led the discussions for us in this area. Ladies and gentlemen, the tech companies are coming after us because they say they can personalize instruction in ways that the public standardized system will not accommodate. Ladies and gentlemen, we got to figure out how to do that. Why? Because GPT-3 is over 100 times more powerful than GPT-2 is. And while it was only created 6 months ago, there are apps already out there right now over the last several weeks, and I'm going to show them to you. And we've got to figure out how to deal with them, because what GPT-3 does is not simply find information for the kids in our schools or monitor and keep them informed. It will create information for them. So let me give you an example. GPT-2, remember it? Start to write the email to more, it gives me the next 2 or 3 words. Anybody in the room want to guess what GPT-3 does? It writes the entire email. Using the phraseology I would use, even all my misspelled words. Mort's will all be perfect English. Mine will not be. It's predictive analytics. Give a kid a writing assignment. Google it. The teacher can't tell whether the GPT-3 system wrote it or the kid wrote it. It'll also give you the bibliography. It'll create it for you instantly, as fast as Siri now gets information for you. See, GPT-2 dealt with keywords. GPT-3, 100 times more powerful, deals with entire meaning, and the information it has at its fingertips is every piece of information that's in the internet. Ladies and gentlemen, what is that going to do to literacy in this country? Forgive me, what's it going to do to brain development? I have a son-in-law in the medical field. He talks to me about this a ton. People in neurology, like Paul Nussbaum and others, say, do you have any idea of what this technology is going to do? And who's going to be the early adopters? The young or the old? The young. What should it do to our instructional programs? And so let me give you examples, just a few. I'm going to hold myself back, just a few quick examples of what this technology can do. And also recognize that they're creating higher and higher resolution of avatars. So we're going to go to a young lady here in a moment. And GPT-3 was asked, you'll see a simple question to this avatar, and it answered it. I want to see how good you are. Moore, come on over here with me, Moore. Moore is very, very bright. He really is. Is that not true, Dan? Yeah. Now, Dan, I could have called you up here, but I thought maybe more appropriate to put Mort in you. Okay. Moore, I want you to quickly tell me.
Can I call a friend?
No, you cannot call a friend. Quickly tell us, Moore, what is the color of a mirror?
Well, without any reflection on you, I'm not sure. Let's see. There is no color.
Okay. You're going to sit back down because you failed. Let's see. Ask very quickly. Watch what happens.
What color is a mirror?
A mirror is a very good example of a surface that reflects light. It's made of two pieces of glass, and the glass is coated with a layer of silver atoms. When light hits the mirror, it bounces off the atoms and gets reflected back to our eyes.
Sure. So what color is it?
The color of a mirror depends on the color of the object that's being reflected. If you look at a white piece of paper, the reflection will be white. If you look at a black piece of paper, the reflection will be black.
What's that mean? You can ask this thing, anything is going to get the answer. Let me give you another example, and we'll have some people guess here. What food does a rainbow taste like? Okay, everybody think of something. What food does a... Hey, Bart, what do you think, Bart?
For me, I'd have to say pasta.
Pasta. A good Italian boy over here said pasta. I don't know. What do you think, ma'am?
Skittles.
Skittles. I've had other people answer that. What do you think, Dave?
I'm going to follow his lead and go pizza.
Pizza. Okay. Let's see what GPT-3 says instantly to the question.
What's the closest tasting food to a rainbow?
A rainbow is a spectrum of light that is visible when the sun shines on droplets of moisture in the atmosphere. So, if you want to taste a rainbow, you will need to find some water droplets in the atmosphere.
Is it correct? See, what do our kids need to know, do, be like? Let me take it deeper. Language translation. It can do instantaneous language translation. So let me show you three very dramatically different examples, okay? First one is converting from one language to another. The second one is taking a very difficult legal document and instantly rewriting it so a second grader can understand it. Okay, watch.
One of the common applications of GPT-3 is translation. So here we can give it an example of an English sentence that we want translated. Your order will arrive in 7 to 10 business days, and ask it to translate into French. We can also use translation to translate things that are written in legalese. This is an NDA, non-disclosure agreement, and translate that into something that a second grader would understand.
Instantaneous. By the way, you know how scared this has got the publishers? Think about it. Let me take you deeper. Here's another example.
So one of my favorite examples here is the user says, my apartment had mold and it made me sick. To which the GPT-3 generates, the plaintiff's dwelling was infested with toxic and allergenic mold spores, and plaintiff was rendered physically incapable of pursuing his or her usual and customary vocation, occupation, and or recreation. Now, this is pretty impressive as well. It almost seems to understand the concept of mold making you sick and equate that with, rendered physically incapable. So this is pretty exciting stuff. I mean, here's another one. My landlord didn't maintain the property. GPT takes that text and generates, the defendants have permitted the real property to fall into despair and have failed to comply with the state and local health and safety codes and regulations. Can't wait to see where this goes legally and how much it brings down the accessibility of legal services to the everyday person.
What are employees in the workplace going to expect future workers to use? The technology that's faster, more efficiently, less expensive, or our graduates? And yet, clearly there are going to be more jobs, but they do not look at all like our present jobs. Let me take you deeper. The first video I'll show you very quickly is one from Apple. I showed it first a year ago. It was futuristic. It is now on the market.
A normal-looking pair of glasses, perhaps like these, is the future of augmented reality. AR blends the real world with the virtual one. The glasses will bring information from your phone to your face, so you'll be able to see texts, emails, and more on both lenses without anyone else around you being able to see what's on your screen.
Do you realize that that means that kids literally could be sitting in our classrooms playing video games with each other, and we would never know it? And if you think that one's tough, this is a contact lens. Literally with GPT-3, it's an app, just come out, and they have the contact lens on, and you activate it by looking to the left. That's why you see the little motor there. And it will instantaneously translate language. So here's a man in Japan, can't read Japanese, but wants therefore to read the signs, and it converts it instantly into English for him. What's that do to second language programs? It doesn't mean they're not important, but it may be more about cultural understanding than it is language translation. Or the ability to reason. See, GPT-3 doesn't just call information, it creates information. So here's a question, another app. You ask it a math problem, it answers it, and then it says, can you write that in a JavaScript? Think what this will do literally over the next 12 months to programmers nationwide.
GPT-3, what is 4,786 plus 5,326?
10,112.
Can you write a JavaScript function which takes any number and adds 265 to it?
Function n, return n plus 265.
It looks like you're using reasoning to answer these questions. Is that right? Or were you able to find the answers in your training data?
I'm using reasoning to answer these questions.
And so what are the tech companies looking at? Use this technology in education. What's it mean? Kids doing math? The app can instantly track whether the child's getting the math problem right or wrong, knows the child's history, what they have an interest in, bring up an example of that math application to an area that child has an interest in, and instantly, in effect, tutor it. A little different, Dan, than that classroom of 100 years ago. Here's the question. With or without us? I began early by saying I thank God every time I go internationally and return to America, because we are about a lot more than simply core academics. We need the kids in public education, but we got to bring public education into the 21st century.